before I went to the University of Massachusetts, not for music. And when I got there, I was very taken immediately by some of the professors that were there in the African American Studies department. So, as it turned out, my first real teacher in music was Yusef Lateef. I encountered him there, and obviously I wasn't studying guitar with him, but he was really my first music teacher.
Mhm. Well, then, how did he see in you the talent? Did you just got taken with guitar and start studying? Did he see your talent, or were you just in one of his classes?
I auditioned for composition. So
Oh,
I went to the school, but I couldn't really play guitar at all at the time. I was an absolute beginner
mm,
entering college. So I would go to a local jam session. I got the real book. I learned by listening to, you know, classic people. And I I don't even know how I did it. I kind of taught myself how to read music a little bit,
oh.
and I started composing immediately. And I took some compositions into Yusef's office hours and showed him, and he accepted me into his composition studio. And I think that
So,
was the end of my junior year. So I just, studied and practiced really on my own that whole time and got to the point where I was able to audition for him.
so you composed, and so are you a prodigy somehow because you're self-taught, and then you must have composed something very special that the uh, Yusef Lateef would recognize. What
Well,
about?
that's really much more of a testament to him. I'm not a
Mm,
prodigy at all.
mm,
Everything on guitar is very hard for me. It takes me a lot of practice time. I have to practice for hours every day before any gig. I have to
mm,
practice everything I'm going to play at the gig. I have to practice. So guitar is not easy for me. It didn't come easy. In terms of why Yusef was interested in me, that's really a testament to how incredible he was as a educator and as a person. He what I really learned from Yusef was that he was interested in collaborating with his students. So to
mm.
him, he really seemed to view everything as a collaboration as well as imparting certain knowledge. So he was, I guess, he was intrigued and he was curious how curious I was.
Mhm.
That's what, drew him to be interested in what I had to contribute.
Well, Yusef must have seen the various talents of his students and then wanted to collaborate with them on account of those talents. What about some of those compositions that you submitted to Yusef? Uh, have any of them, as a result, been uh, published?
So the last Iron City record from, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago is called Groove Machine. And that was my first record on Origin. On that record, I actually finally got to a point where I completed some of the work that I had started with him back, 20 years ago now at this point.
Mm, mhm.
And there are three or four components of tunes that I wrote on that record that I was able to incorporate these ideas that I had very rudimentary sketches of. So for me, that process of composition has turned out to be, I have sort of unique ideas which are kind of without form and without, back in the day when these ideas came to me and I tried to write them and I tried to explore that in my composition studies with him. I had ideas that, it was a melody, but it didn't fit into a blues or it didn't fit into a chord progression. And I didn't have the skill set to count properly and write it properly on the page to make these ideas conform to something that made sense for the band that I had. So it's almost as if I had to learn the skill set in order to present my ideas in a hard bop context or in a jazz composition context. So it's been a long process for me to do that, to learn how to do that. And that's really been the only, training in composition. I've had some great training from Dave Stryker. He was really my primary guitar teacher.
Mm.
But this was after college. And he gave me great advice and great training really on arranging, not really so much on composition. He doesn't really cross that line into influencing at the time my creativity as much as he helped to take my ideas and show me how to put those ideas into the form. So Dave Stryker was really the most important person in that element of my development.
Is there any one point where you realized that blues comes first and then jazz is part of blues?
I learned it when I was at UMass. I studied African American studies. I didn't go for music.
Mm.
I learned this by listening to what Yusef Lateef had to say and what Archie Shepp had to say and what Frederick Tillis, a tremendous composer and saxophonist, had to say. Billy Taylor was one of my teachers at UMass. John Blake, I met over the summer program at UMass. So I learned this specifically by studying African American studies. So reading, Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Amiri Baraka, people who have expression that isn't necessarily music expression, right? But it's all related and it's all connected and it's all really the same thing.